how much virtuous, how important this month of Ramadan is, they would wish and desire that the entirety of the whole year is Ramadan. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that this is the month of rahmah. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends. This is the month of forgiveness. This is the month where we can return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is the month where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects people from hellfire. But we must ask ourselves, how are we planning for this month? How will we welcome the month of Ramadan? It's narrated that Sahaba radiallahu anhum used to prepare 6 months in advance. 6 months in advance for the month of Ramadan, because they truly understood how important this month is for the Muslim. And unfortunately, you find, my brothers in Islam, that for many people today, it has become something cultural. It has become something routinic. And we are missing the point and the essence of this holy month that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me and you as an opportunity to return to Him. We don't spend the first week trying to overcome with the fasting and the headaches and all that, and spend the second week with some invitations, and then the last 10 days you find that the month of Ramadan has just slipped away and gone. This is preparation, my brothers in Islam. We all want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all want to change. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He will never change the state of a nation unless they start with a change that's within themselves. The change starts with me. You find that the majority of the preparation that we do, my brothers in Islam, is not the one that will draw us nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet you find that the majority of the preparation that we do is stocking up the pantry and the fridge, subhanAllah. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained and made fasting obligatory upon you. Not so that you can abstain from food and water, no, so that you may attain piety, so that you can draw nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the true objective, my brothers in Islam.
The fuqaha mentioned fasting of the eyes, fasting of the ears, fasting of the tongues, fasting of the eyes, the hands, the feet. What does it mean, the fasting of these bodily parts? To fast your eyes is to not look at anything which is disobeying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To not look at anything haram. Like a sawm al-udhun. How many Muslims in the month of Ramadan listen to music, saying that this is passing time? Or sawm al-lisani, fasting of our tongues. People backbiting, gossiping, slandering. You find cursing, reviling, swearing, spreading of rumors, backbiting. Unfortunately increases in this month of Ramadan. Because some of us don't understand the intent of Ramadan. That's why a person may only gain hunger and thirst and fatigue in this month of Ramadan, because they've not really understood the whole purpose of this month of Ramadan. وَصَوْمُ الْيَدِّ, not to touch anything haram, or to take anything haram. Sawm al-rijli, not to walk to anywhere haram. That many young Muslims begin to indulge in haram. These are all elements of fasting we need to develop, till eventually you find that the person guards their faculties. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that individual. Will call out to Jibreel that I love so and so, till eventually that I become the eyes by which the believer sees, the hand by which the believer touches, the leg by which the believer walks. What does this hadith mean? The person only looks at that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only touches that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only walks to that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Till eventually if the believer, if he asks me, then I'll give him. If he's to seek my protection, my refuge, I will protect him.
But imagine if you were prepared and planned to meet the month of Ramadan wanting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, wanting to improve yourself as a Muslim, wanting to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask yourself the question, how can I get the best out of this month? What are my objectives? How can I make sure that I seize the opportunity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is presenting to me? SubhanAllah, you find something amazing about this month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He says the month of Ramadan is the month that the Quran was sent down. When you look into these verses and analyze, you realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He first makes mention of the month of Ramadan, He associates it with the book of Allah. He makes an association with the book of Allah before He makes an association with the month of Ramadan with fasting. This has a great lesson for us, a great lesson for me and you to realize that the month of Ramadan is not just about abstaining from food. It's about connecting with the book of Allah. And this is one of the objectives and one of the plans that we must make. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah, make a plan. If you're unable to read the book of Allah Do whatever you can do to make sure that you improve in your connectivity, in your relationship with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are able to read, it's an opportunity for you to memorize. It's an opportunity for you to read, do a complete khatam of the Quran. Connect with the book of Allah. This is how the relationship starts, my brothers in Islam. Our Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us something amazing about the benefit of the book of Allah and the month of Ramadan. He says, the fasting will come on the day of judgment and the Quran will come on the day of judgment. He says, Ya Allah, I prevented this person from his food and from his water. Please make me his intercession. Make me his intercession. So the Quran will come and say, Ya Allah, I have made this person, I have prevented him from sleeping at night because he stayed up reading the book of Allah. Make me his intercession. So you have the Quran and the fasting fighting who will intercede for you on the day of judgment. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow both of these, the Quran and the fasting, to intercede for you on the day of judgment. My brothers in Islam, start from now. If you start from now, by Allah, you will find that by the time the month of Ramadan is there, you are tasting the beauty of it. And this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my brothers in Islam, it's a means of guidance. And we all need the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That book of Allah, my brothers in Islam, is a means of therapy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is presenting us with an amazing opportunity. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us in the hadith, whosoever fasts in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive his previous sins. And another narration, he says, whosoever stands up in prayer in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive his sins. From now, start practicing.